Folks, we're back. This is Steve Sampson, Jim Jones with another episode of Veterans in Politics. Tonight we have a special guest, Elizabeth Helgelien. She's a candidate for Nevada's Congressional number 3. But before we get to Ms. Helgelien, Jim, you have any rants?
Yeah, well, first I just wanted to start off by saying that my thoughts and prayers are with everybody in the city of Kansas City. If people aren't aware, they had their big parade on Wednesday for winning the Super Bowl. And of course, not of course, but unfortunately, there was a shooting. And then now here's where the of course comes in. Now, of course, President Biden's saying this is why we need to enact stronger gun laws because, that not having strong enough gun laws, that's why this happened. For the life of me, I've never understood after sporting events, after your team wins the title, it seems like every time this happens, like I remember years ago when they thought for sure at Game 6, the Chicago Bulls were going to win that game and win the NBA championship. You know what they were doing that day to prepare for it? They're boarding up windows. They're putting up barricades. So how is that a celebration? Like every time your team wins a championship, they flip cars over, they start fires. Like I just don't understand what these people are thinking. So just everybody needs to take a deep breath. Just hope everything gets settled down in Kansas City. And it's not about gun control. It's about people control. I'm the biggest sports fan in the world. Steve knows that. I would never in a million years think about going and starting a fire if the Broncos win the Super Bowl. That's probably the last thing from my mind. So just everybody, just please, your team wins the championship. That's not a reason to riot.
Yeah. Speaking of unfortunate incidents, I just want to do a moment of silence for those 5 Marines that passed away in a helicopter off of California. Is that it, Jim? Yeah. So we got Ms. Helgelien. How you doing, ma'am?
Hi, good. How are you?
Good. Tell us about yourself.
Yes, so my name's Elizabeth Helgelien. I'm running for Congress in Nevada's 3rd Congressional District. I'm a wife, a mother, a business owner, and a proud American. So I made history as the youngest female ever elected to the Nevada State Senate at the age of 27. I ran against an incumbent, Rhino incumbent, beat him by 15%. He had all the money, all the name recognition, and all the establishment support, but I had the people support. I went on to beat a millionaire Democrat by 5% in a Democrat district as a conservative. So I've won in the district before, beat an incumbent before, beat a millionaire Democrat before. When it was a big deal because I was I was in my 20s at the time, and went out and I campaigned, and the way that I did it is I just went out and I talked with the people. And that's what we really have to do is listen to them and then put into action what their needs are. So I was able to do that. And so when I served in the state Senate, I served in the Commerce, Labor and Energy Committee, the Transportation Committee, and the Revenue Committee. I received a 100% rating by the American Conservative Union for the way that I voted. And I'll tell you, one of the best compliments I ever got was actually from a liberal Democrat in my district. And he said, Elizabeth, I don't agree with your policies, but I always know where you stand, and that's why I'm going to vote for you. And I think that's the kind of leadership we need, somebody who's transparent and who's principled and who actually stands up for what they believe in. So I've done that before. I've proven myself that I do what I say I'm going to do. So this congressional district is very similar lines to my state Senate district. So I can go back to those same voters and say, okay, this is how you elected me. This is exactly what I did, and now I can ask you for your vote again. And that's, very rare from somebody who's been in office before. So I have the ability to do that. I think it's super important that we realize the struggles and it's very easy to realize the struggles that we're having. Our border is being invaded. Fentanyl is flooding in. Human trafficking is flooding in. There's people who are struggling to make ends meet. We know that our electricity has doubled over the last few months. But now, of course, our fuel prices are increased, and now our gas to heat our homes has increased just this month. It doubled So people are really struggling to buy their prescriptions and to feed their families. And it's a real struggle. So we really have to get back to the basics of representing the people. And so that's why I'm running, because I know I've done that before. I've come out and I've actually done what I said I was going to do. And we really have to put we the people first and stop promoting the policies, the policy wonks who tell us one thing to get our vote right, and then they do the exact opposite once they're elected. They fold under the pressures of the establishment, and we just can't afford that behavior anymore.
What are the boundary lines for District 3?
Yeah, so my district goes from Ann Road, a little bit, it depends on west of the 215, it goes a little bit further north, but typically that Ann Road, and then everything south and west of the 15, all the way down to the California and Arizona border is my district.
So all the way down to Prim?
Yeah, and then we pick up parts of Henderson as well, just south of the airport.
Where are you running for this seat?
What's that?
Where are you running for Congress 3?
I mean, it's evident of what's happening in our country. So I ran in the state and served and loved the people of my district. But now we're seeing it such a struggle on a federal level and so much corruption. You know, we just saw another bill that they're, of course, not closing the border. They're not doing what the people want, what the will of the people want. And so knowing that I've done that, I've gone up and I've actually had the courage to not just stand up against the Democrats. I was in the minority at the time. I didn't just stand up against the Democrats when I served in the Senate, but I stood up against the weak Republicans who, you know, we all campaigned on no taxes, right? And when I got into office, all the Republicans, or I should say the majority of the Republicans campaigned on no taxes, right? So we get into office, the Republican governor walks into the caucus room, and says, I want to raise taxes. And I want all of you Senate Republicans to vote with me so we look unified. And all of the Senate Republicans were going to do it, not one objected. So imagine me in my 20s at the time, 5'2", and I literally stood up and I pointed to each of them and I said, you are the exact reason why I ran for office. You all just campaigned and said that you would not do this. And here you are months later going against your word and voting for taxes. So you all can do it, but I'm not going to. And so the vote came up and days passed, and I was able to get the majority of the Senate Republicans to vote with me against the tax increases. So if we have somebody who's principled and who actually has the courage to stand up for what they believe in and stand up for Nevadans, then other people will fall in line. They just need that leader who's going to be able to do that. And that's where I think we're lacking. We do have so many great people in Congress right now, but we need more of those. We don't need just Republicans. It does matter what kind of Republican. We see that, obviously. We just had 22 senators, United States senators, vote the way that they just did, and that's horrible. So it does matter what kind of Republican we put in there. We need the Republicans, the conservative Republicans who are actually going to do what they say they're going to do.
So, Mrs. Helgelien, here's my first question for you. I first off want to say I was very impressed with you when you got elected.
Thank you.
And I spoke to a lot of people about how much you did stand up and when you were elected. But now, going from a state office, how much research have you done to get up to speed on the federal issues? Because legislating at a federal level is much different than a state level.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing that people have to realize is, of course, you've got your staff and you've got we should not get lost in the idea of the legislating part, the laws and the policies, right? That can all be learned. That can be whoever the person is. That's the easy part. The hard part is standing up to the establishment, is standing up to politics as usual, is standing up and actually standing up for the people. So that's the hard part. And everybody says they're going to do it, but it's very rare that people do. So absolutely, I've done that. I've been to Washington. I've had those conversations. I have incredible amounts of endorsements from people who are currently elected to Congress. I have U.S. Senator Coach Tommy Tuberville has endorsed us. Congresswoman Anna Paulina Luna has endorsed us. Congressman Corey Mills has endorsed us, Congressman Paul Gosar. We have several.
How'd you pull off all those endorsements?
It just went and met with them, and they know that our campaign. They know how hard we work. They know what we've done. We've had great conversations with them, and it was really just meeting them and them getting to know us. And it's just been great because we have proven ourselves, and that's something that, again, a lot of people don't do. So to be able to have those relationships with people, build those relationships with people, the ones that actually are going up and doing what they say they're going to do and fighting for the American people, that's so crucial. And so to have their support, it speaks volumes. We have Moms for America has endorsed us. We have over 26 amazing endorsements. I have an incredible endorsement we'll be announcing this next week. So
Ms. Helgelien, before we get too far away from it, here's one of the things that I've been asking. So you brought up staff. Mm-hmm. So I want you to correct me if I'm wrong. This is something that I've been told in the past, that the majority of your staff, when you get to Washington, will already be in place, will be appointed for you, or like you'll be introduced to your staff. One of the frustrations that I have is that I believe that much of what happens at the federal level in this country is a lot of the bills and stuff that we see and people vote on, right, are written by unelected bureaucrats. And so you might get, and no offense on age, but you might get a 21-year-old political science intern, and she's going to write an energy bill. Mm-hmm. And then you propose that energy bill, and it's like, should a 21-year-old political science major or a pool of non-elected, exactly, that's a better way to put it. So what would you do to push back on your staff on that and actually be involved in writing these bills and understanding what is in them?
Absolutely. And that's a great thing that I completely wanted in the state Senate too. So we have to make sure that our bills are single subject bills, right? That's the first step, because they're so packed with the pork, right, the fat, and that's we're seeing all these CRs and everything. So yeah, there's so much just thrown into these bills. I think the first thing we need to do is get to a single subject bill. That's the most important thing. And then yeah, we have to. It's great to have people who have the institutional knowledge of how to write those bills, and you have your, the attorneys and all of that, those things. But we as legislators, we as representatives, we're the ones who are elected to represent the people. And we have to make sure that's exactly what we're doing. And that's where, again, we're lost. So many people think, oh, I've got this position. Oh, here's me. Let my staff do this. And we can't do that. You are the representatives. You have to answer to the people, and you should be able to speak to those things. And for me, I think we need to get back to just having one subject in those bills.
So, the president has term limits, and Congress and U.S. Senate does not. Mm-hmm. And I think that's where the corruption starts.
Correct.
Are you going to sign the term limit pledge? Have you done that? So
one of the very first things that I did when I announced I was running for U.S. Congress was sign the term limits bill. That is crucial that we get that. You're absolutely right. It's, so many lobbyists, they're sitting there paying. It's basically they're investing, right, in these elected officials for them to be reelected over and over again, because this is what they're putting money into. So we have to make sure that people are we were not meant, our founding fathers did not want us to be in office for 30 years. Back then,
50 years
people,
in Biden's case.
Exactly. So, they served, and then they went back to their farms. They went back to their homes. And that was the pride. You're supposed to be a representative. You're supposed to be of the people, by the people, for the people, right? Well, if you're in Washington for 30, 40, 50 years, you're not, of the people. And you're losing touch. So you absolutely need to have term limits, for sure.
So can you explain to me, and I apologize, Steve, can you explain exactly what the term limit bill is? Like what specifically, like how many years, so the viewers and listeners can understand?
Absolutely. So some people talk about, and that's debatable. So some people talk about it being for 6 years or, in the House, or 12 years and then 12 years and then you're termed out. So it just depends what is presented, but you're not. So the way that it's written currently, and again, it's to be worked on, and the way that they currently have it is so people will sign it, right? Current elected officials, and they'll vote for it. Is you're not terming yourself out. You're saying, okay, this is starting at a certain point. But then going forward, it's going to be this. Yeah.
Okay.
So you're not. Yeah. So that way you're getting other people to actually sign on to it. Mm-hmm.
So there's about, I think, 36, 37 states already legalize marijuana, whether it be for recreational or medical or both. And it's the same thing when we had prohibition, when alcohol was illegal and they had all those underground clubs and all that stuff. How do you feel about legalizing marijuana on a federal level so these dispensaries don't have to put their money underneath their mattress and in their walls and they could actually take it to the bank?
I mean, that's something something to look at. If that comes up, it's something to look at. I believe in bringing laws and having the government as small as possible. So I think if we can bring it individualized, I think if we can bring it back down to the states, that's one thing. But certainly something to look at, especially when we're talking about our firearms, right? Right now, you've got to be able to make sure that you can bring your firearm to different states. So yeah, it's definitely something that we need to be looking at.
How would you look at that, though? I mean, what would you do to make? I don't even know what your position is on it, but what would you do to make marijuana illegal on a federal level so they could put it in the banks? Because Nevada, take Nevada for example. We're legal, recreational, and medical for marijuana, but still, none of these dispensary owners could put their money in the bank because it's not federally regulated. How could you, as a congresswoman, make marijuana federally regulated so these business owners could put the money in the banks and probably get federal taxes for it?
I'm certainly open to listening to those people, and I would want to go to them and to see how it is for them. We have to really be educated on that topic. I am not a user of that, so I couldn't even know where to start looking. Well, I know where to start looking, but what questions to ask. So we need to really go and we need to talk to them. We need to listen to them and see what their issues are. And that's really where we have to start as ground level with that. So that's how I would start doing it. When I was in the state Senate, I would bring I would have lobbyists all the time say to me, wow, a legislator's never done this, and the legislators never called me into their office before, because I wanted to understand. And so we had, for example, we would always go into our caucus room and talk about the bills coming up, right? And so we would see the bills that were coming up, we would talk about them, but we needed to understand who was for it, who was against it, and why. And so to really do that, so I would bring in the lobbyist at the time, and I would say, okay, of course not for a long time, for a few minutes, and I would say, okay, what bills are you here to support? What are you against? Who else is against it, and why? And so we would really just take the notes, and we would really get that understanding, and then we'd go back to the people or whoever that affected and talk with them as well. And so it's not just, sitting down, now it's vote for this or vote for that. You really have to look at the unintended consequences of some of these things too. So it's not here's what I'm going to do right now this second, because I don't know all of the steps of how we're going to get something like that done. But we do need to do the homework to make sure that we do it correctly and do it safely if that's something that's going to happen.
So I want to just kind of follow up with Steve's question on that one. So we kind of already understand the unintended consequences of not having it legalized on a federal level here in the state of Nevada in particular, because we're having an issue with it being accounted for. Exactly how many dollars are being raised by the legalization of marijuana, because when we legalized it as a state, it was supposed to be that money was supposed to go to education. But not 100% of that money is going to education, because in my opinion, there's not a proper accounting of it. So it's all just getting dumped into the rainy day fund
Yes,
or the
general
general fund. And no one
Spend
knows
however
where
they
it
want.
went because they can't track it. But I believe, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe that if it was legal on a federal level, it would be harder to hide that money here in the state.
Well, that's a good theory, but they do hide a lot of money in places where it shouldn't
I'm
be
not
hidden.
saying
But
it's going
I
to be
get it.
end all
Right,
be all, but I
right.
just think it's a scapegoat.
Yeah, it's definitely something that we have to take seriously and consider. I think that's a valid argument for that, for sure. So, yeah, that's a good point, but we definitely have to be serious about it. We see a lot of issues. I mean, look at Oregon, for example. They legalized one thing, and now they've legalized everything. And that poor state is so torn down. That's a state that I was born in. It's heartbreaking to go back to and visit. It's, I went to Oregon and to see they literally have chain link fences around their buildings, around their state buildings in downtown Portland. That's sad. They literally have people sleeping on the streets, people who can't even function. And so there are other unintended consequences for sure to think about. But to see a state like that devastated so much, and the people just, what they're going through and their struggles. We have, people here who are struggling with drugs as well, and we really have to help them. And so we really have to think about all of those things for sure. But yeah, thank you. That's a great point that you bring up.
So you think our country has a mental illness problem?
There is certainly a mental illness problem, and it's heartbreaking. I was speaking with somebody, and they, I mean, we see it all the time. We see it in our children. I don't even have to tell you guys about and bring it up, but I certainly will, about when we had COVID, right? And we had the shutdowns. How many students did we have that committed suicide? How much higher did that suicide rate go just in our children because they were had to deal with that? So there's a lot of mental illness. There's a lot of struggles on different levels that are affected. Our veterans are affected by so many things, but we have so many people who are affected mentally. We're seeing it across the spectrum in our country. So it's definitely a struggle that we have to focus on for sure.
How would you focus on it as a congresswoman?
Well, we really have to, I think one of the biggest things is we really have to promote, there's so many nonprofits that are willing to help, and we really have to get back to helping more nonprofits to get more people who are struggling. I mean, we've got some good services here to get people in. We've got people struggling with drugs and homelessness to get in. We need more of that. We need more services for people who are struggling and more education and really to let people know that they're not alone. I think that's the biggest thing, is people feel alone. And so that's what we really need to do and be there for the people.
Do you think we should take the monies that we allocate and give and take some away from the prison system and put it towards the mental health epidemic that we have here, instead of incarcerating our citizens? Maybe try to treat them and get them to be productive instead of putting them in prison and train them how to be a thug.
Yes, we need to definitely do that. Definitely rehabilitate. Definitely help. Absolutely do that. I think we need to take a lot of money that we're spending on the government is spending on a federal level, and actually, that could be going. The money that we've sent over to Ukraine, we could have closed our border. We could have given $1 million to every homeless veteran. We could do so many things with the government waste that's happening. So yes, we should absolutely do things like that, things that are so helpful to the people instead of just throwing them behind bars. Absolutely, we should be helping everybody.
Since you brought up Ukraine and opened up that door.
I was going to say, just 1 second before we get to foreign policy, because I was going to pivot to foreign policy too. Just after this question, though, you have brought up a very good point with continuing resolutions. Mm-hmm. Okay, so one of my biggest pet peeves, and I brought it up on the show several times, and I'm going to bring it up right now. Okay, so we're in February. Okay, so what's going to happen come October is because we're not going to pass a federal budget, and then we're going to have to do this crazy continuing resolution to keep the government running. If elected to Congress, what would you do to your peers, like, just, if nothing else, just a follow-up, like, hey, where are we at on the budget proposal for this year? Like, where are we at in the process to be able to actually get a budget to the president's desk so he can either sign it or veto it and send it back to us, so we can actually have the government funded by the beginning of October when it's supposed to be.
Yeah, the fact that we're not having these conversations until it gets to be a few weeks out is ridiculous. Yeah. So what I did when I was in the state senate, and so you know what I'll be doing this time too, and it's now social media. Back then I was old. Sorry, I guess I'm old. I'm dating myself. It's not like it is today. So I'll be doing it a lot more. Is I think that we need to have somebody that says, okay, day one, we're not discussing this, and then go to the people that we should be doing it. Why is it not in front of the committees? Why are we not doing all of these things that we should be doing to look at a budget and actually bring it up to the forefront of the people? The people need to be aware of this. Oh, nope, we're talking about let's pass a stamp. We're gonna have this. Let's put this bird on a stamp. Really, that's what we're focusing on? Oh, we're focusing on funding Russian cats to be walking on treadmills. Why are we doing that? Come on. Let's focus on what really matters to the people, and the budget, it really matters to the people. That's so much government waste, and that's truly, yes, we are literally paying so much money to study Russian cats walking on treadmills. Why? I don't know, but yes, I am all for calling people out. I'm all for saying, okay, it's day 3, still not talking about it. Day 4, day 5, day 6, and so on and so on. We need to make sure that we're talking about this every single day, because we all get busy with our lives. I get it. I get that there's so much to do and a lot of super important things to do in the legislature. Absolutely. But that should be one of the top things. With the people struggling the way that they're struggling, when I'm going and knocking on a door and I have a grown man almost in tears, that's heartbreaking.
Well, yeah, and just to put it on a veterans level or a military level, how exactly, as a legislative body, can you figure out the end strength numbers that you're going to fund for a year if you don't have the budget proposal in front of you to know how much money you're going to have to begin with?
Yes.
So it really has a very negative impact on our military readiness, and which is not really great right now.
Right. And really, we should be going back to, why isn't the government not working within their means? Like we all have to, right?
Yeah.
We have a budget. We can't just say, oh, I can't pay my bills. Okay, bank, give me all this money. You can't do that. So why is the federal government doing that? We have to be working within our means, and that's really where we have to start.
So you've heard the last bill that was passed in Washington on the funding to Ukraine and to Israel. Do you think that bill was passed because it has so much other pork in it? Or do you think that bill was passed because these Washington politicians don't want the war to come on our land? They rather pay for the war to be abroad, and they figured if they pay for the war to be abroad, it won't come to the United States. Do you think that was probably the thinking of it, or what is your?
That's a good theory. That's a great theory. Yeah, we should not be sending any more money over there. We have to start, and one thing that they keep saying, oh, well, we can do both. We can fund Ukraine and we can close our border. Well, then do it.
Right.
Then do it.
I haven't seen the proof yet.
Do it then. If that's what we really can do, then why? Okay, well, then stop funding Ukraine until our border's closed. And it's always kicking the can down the road. And we can't be doing that, guys. And nobody's calling them out. Call them out. Say, okay, if we really can do that, then let's do that. But let's start here at home. And then let's focus on other things. But the fact that we're spending that much money, and I said it and I'll say it again, we're spending that much money when we could have closed our border multiple times over. We could have given $1 million to every homeless veteran. I mean, it's ridiculous. We could have gone and helped with mental illness. We could have spent that money so much better ways than sending it over to Ukraine. But the fact that they're saying things like, oh, well, we could do both, then do both.
So I wanted to ask you, and it's in the same thing, it's pertaining to Ukraine. And I just want to get a feel for your overall, well, I've gotten an idea already, overall philosophy on foreign affairs, especially when it comes to military. One of the things that I have always found frustrating is that, and I'm not defending Vladimir Putin at all, he's a nut. But at the same time, you can't, we wouldn't allow the Russians to expand, and let's take the Cuban Missile Crisis. When we found out that was going on, we almost went to nuclear war over it, okay? Well, so how do you blame Putin for getting a little bit shaky? Okay, we already have Poland in NATO, and then we were going to try to get Ukraine into NATO, and when he started getting whispers of that, he's like, oh, no, that's not going to happen. I'm not having NATO all the way up to my borders. What's your position on NATO, and do you honestly think it's even really that, is it really as necessary as it used to be now that the Cold War is over?
There's
a long-winded question, I know.
Yes, thank you for that. I really appreciate that question. There's benefits to it, I'm sure, but we really need to, again,
it's almost like we're poking the bear unnecessarily.
Yes, yeah.
In my opinion.
I think you're right about that. I think that we're on the same page with that.
So the threat that just recently came up about Russia sending nukes into space to cripple our satellites, wouldn't it cripple their satellites as well? And as a congressman, how would you try to do some type of preventive maintenance for a threat like that?
Isn't it great that we have Space Force? And everybody made fun of them.
Yeah.
By the way, my daughter is serving in Space Force.
Is she?
Very
Nice.
proudly serving in Space Force. So again, it goes back to, aren't we glad we have Space Force? Aren't we glad we have our military? So there's a very important reason why we have to support our military, for sure, and be proactive. And that's what they're doing, and we need to continue to support them.
Well, how, as a member of Congress, how would you help recruit American men and women to join the military, because their numbers are just falling now?
Yes.
How would you motivate them? What would you do as a congressional legislature to push that?
Well, the fact that we had the BS that we did, excuse my language, BS, going to say it again, that we were actually mandating our servicemen and women to get shots in order to stay, and you know which ones I'm talking about, vaccines to stay in the military. They were literally weeding out our most crucial people. Why? Because they weren't falling in line. So it was really about control. So we really need to first look at reasons why they were mandating our best and brightest to get a vaccine, to mandate that when really we know it's not good, right? And not tried and tested. So that's one. We need to get rid of that mandate, right? But we need to really get back to the strength of our military, the honor of our military. You all swore an oath to defend and protect our country and our Constitution. But we have, unfortunately, some bodies who focused on transgenderism. And that's really not the strength of our military. We need to be proud. We need to be able to make everybody feel comfortable, feel reassured, feel that the person standing next to them is going to be able to perform at their highest and best. That should be the focus. And I think as long as we get back to that and get back to what you did when you were in the military, I think we'll be able to recruit more and more.
Yeah, so what would you do specifically or to the best that you can explain it? Obviously, once you get elected, you'll understand more. But one of the things that I've always really wanted to see out of Congress people and senators too is to really push back on the administration and say, hey, look, the military is not a social experiment. That is not what the military is in place for. The military is in place to defend and protect the country. It's not supposed to be a social experiment.
Right.
So how would you talk to maybe talk to some of your peers that get a little, as Margaret Thatcher told Bush Sr., going a little wobbly on that subject?
Yeah.
What would you do to hold them to that?
Well, I think first of all, it starts with leadership, like we talked about, right? We have to have strong people in office elected, not just in the House and the Senate, but we have to have somebody in the administration that's strong. We had that in President Trump, and we need that again in President Trump. So we need him elected, and in the future, we need people like him elected who will stand up and have that courage. We can't have wobbly leaders. But again, we also have to have a strong legislature. We have to have strong people in the House, because it doesn't matter if President Trump is in the White House, but we have Democrats controlling the House and Democrats controlling the Senate. That's not helpful. We have to have strong all throughout. So having that strength is going to be the first step. I have that strength. I'm more than happy to share that. Again, I have a daughter in the military. So it's crucial. It's super important to me to have that strength and to keep her safe. Well, how are we going to keep her safe? By doing exactly what we've said, right? And so to be able to project that and to share that with other elected officials, we have so many members who are elected, who are or who have served in the military, so they understand too. And but we just need more. Like I said, we need more. It's strength in numbers. So we have to elect people who are actually going to do it.
So as a congressional legislature, how would you protect the border, and would you force Texas to take down their barbed wire?
I would absolutely not force Texas to do that. I actually support Texas. We need to be securing our border. We need to finish that wall. That's the number one thing. When you need to stop the bleeding, you're gonna tie a tourniquet, right? That's the first thing that you have to do. You have to build that wall. We need to get our technology back on the border.
Where are you going to get the money from?
Oh, guess what? From all of
Mexico?
From all of our government waste. We can stop funding things like, did you know we're sending, how much money that we're sending over to pay for the tourism for Egypt? We're paying for that. Why are we paying for that? Why aren't we taking that money and spending it on the border? Oh, we're spending government money to go and study Russian cats walking on treadmills.
Or the Consumer Reports with the FDA is one that just drives me nuts. Like the amount of money we spend on, there's literally a person in a room that takes all the different ketchups that are produced in the country, and there's a wooden slope, and he literally pours a certain amount of ketchup on it, and he times it. And that guy made $150,000 last year. That's all he did. Because so how would you address the Consumer Reports? I'm not making it up.
I'm like, wait, hold on. Is this real?
No, it is absolutely real.
Okay.
So how about like going after like Consumer Reports?
Absolutely. Any government waste we need to be looking at. Absolutely. And that's why it's so important to have zero-based budgeting, to go back to the drawing board, to look line by line, to have our bills go to committee, and to actually have everybody submit, here's what we need, and then we actually look at it and have the committees look at it and really just go through and have, again, this single budget, bills.
Do you think that, though, in all honesty, I mean, do you honestly think it's feasible at this point with the size of the federal government that we'll ever be able to get to that point? Like, how can we, I mean, it sounds good in theory, but basically, like you said, how do we stop the bleeding and stop the expansion?
Yeah, we just have, again, it goes back to, and I'm going to say it time and time again, it goes back to people who have courage to stand up. It goes back to term limits. It goes back to, because all of these people who are in office right now, who are pushing all of this spending, guess what? They've been in office forever. They're in safe districts. They want to be there until the day they die. How many elected officials have been in office until they died? And that we've got to stop that. And it goes back to the corruption. And that's how we're going to do it. We need to have things like term limits. We have to have things like people who, again, it's not the policy wonks who get into office. It's the people who have the courage to stand up and fight for we the people and do the right thing. And if we can do that, then we're going to have a successful country.
So, I walk into a Sam's Club and I have to show my Sam's Club ID. And then when I do all my shopping, I might throw a bottle of wine in the cart and then I scan it and then it says show ID for age, and then person comes and looks at your ID and puts the numbers in and you could get your wine and walk out. When I go to the airport, I got to show a driver's license or a passport, and I got to show my boarding pass, right? But when I go vote, I don't have to show a doggone thing. And these are the people that are running our country. These are the people that make these laws, but I don't have to show anything when I vote. What are you going to do about a national voter ID?
Love it. Absolutely. I've done videos. I've done multiple videos on this subject. I absolutely believe we need to get back to having voter ID or get to voter ID. I think we need to have one-day elections. I think just one day here in Nevada. How many weeks do we have before we have early voting? We have late voting after election day. We have up to 2 weeks to count. It's like what? What's our population in Nevada? A fraction of the size of Florida. Florida is able to do it in one day, but it takes us weeks.
Well, we just got rid of the, what's his name, that Joe Gloria guy, so he's gone, the voter registry.
Yeah, but these are laws, and it's ridiculous. We need to have voter ID. I say, there's third world countries that have a fingerprint. Okay, like let's do something. Let's have a secure election. But the way that we're doing it, it's not okay. Let's get back to paper ballots. There are so many things that we could be doing. That's a huge issue. I think if half the population is questioning voter integrity, then we need to do something.
Yeah, because one thing that I brought up on this issue when I had a liberal friend of mine, I do consider him a friend, but I'm way off on this subject. And I said, look, this is the thing that really drives me nuts about you people that are so against the voter ID.
You people.
Yeah, I know. And that's exactly what I got, but I was upset, so probably shouldn't have phrased it that way. But I'm like, so here's the thing. I keep getting told constantly, like, we need to be more like Denmark on this, and we need to be more like Sweden on this, and this country does this. How come we don't do it? I said, our voter registration laws and voter non-ID laws, we're the laughingstock of the world. And in immigration, the same thing. Other countries are just like, what? You don't have to have an ID to vote. You can just basically just walk across this porous border. So what I keep trying to explain to them is like, hey, we're the United States of America. We're supposed to be the leader of the world. So if you want us to have the same educational system as Denmark, then why not have the same immigration policies as Denmark, the same voter ID laws as Denmark?
Yeah, it's troubling. The fact, here's the real issue. They're not just letting people into our country, they're inviting people in. There's an intention to hurt Americans, period. And we're seeing that across the board. We're seeing it with the lawlessness. I don't think we're seeing it with people who support this lawlessness that's going on, people who support our open borders, people who support these elections and the lack of election integrity that's going on. And we have to just ask ourselves, why are we allowing this kind of weakness across the board? They are intentionally trying to destroy our country, and that's the problem. So we have to get back to that. Again, it goes back to having strong leaders. It goes back to having President Trump in the White House, having strong people in the House and strong people in the Senate, because we need, a strong military again. We need to be able to stand strong on the world stage again and be that leader. That's what we really need to get back to.
What would you do to end the sex trafficking here, especially with the children?
That is so heartbreaking. That's something that's very heartbreaking. Our families had to deal with human trafficking. We have friends who have buried their 23-year-old daughter because of fentanyl. We just had a local celebrity here who buried his son because of fentanyl. Human trafficking is such a devastation, and the fact that it's not being taken seriously. I mean, luckily we had the movie come out and was able to educate more people on the topic. Absolutely. Incredible film.
It was it was.
Incredible film, and it was a great way to show and keep people's attention on the topic. It's such a heartbreaking, and it's so real. It's affecting people here in Las Vegas every single day, and it's not being taken seriously. These are not just political issues. Human trafficking is not a political issue. Fentanyl is not a political issue. These are real things that are affecting real people every single day, so we absolutely have to stop it.
You have anything else for Ms. Helgelien?
No, I just really appreciate you coming on, and I know just based off your history, and it was so nice to catch up with you again. I haven't seen you in a number of years. I do know for a fact that just when I dealt with you in the past, that you really are a person of character, and you do stand up to people. I just hope that continues. If you get elected, I really hope that continues. And if it doesn't, if you go against some of the stuff that you said here, I'm sure Steve and I won't have a problem giving you a little.
I was just going to say, you'll know where to find me. It will never happen. That will not happen for sure. I am doing this for the right reasons. We absolutely have to restore our country. We have to restore the power back to we the people, and that is exactly what I'm intending to do.
Okay, well, good luck, and thank you for coming.
Thank you so much for having me.
Is there anything that we didn't cover that you want to cover?
Just that it's super important that people understand that it's not just electing the Republicans, it's electing the right Republicans. Okay. So I'm going to ask you, go ahead.
Okay, that's going to be your closing. Mark's going to zoom in on you and probably start from the beginning.
Okay.
And give you a point of contact.
Okay, perfect. Well, I'm just so thankful for you having me here today. And for allowing me to talk with your viewers and share how important it is that we get back to restoring our country, that we get back to we the people and representing the people. It's so crucial that you get involved not just in November when we have a general election. It's important to get involved in the primaries, that we elect the right people, not just Republicans. We've seen it time and time again. We just saw it the other day that we have Republicans voting incorrectly. We need to make sure that we're electing the right people, that you're electing the right conservative, that you're electing somebody who's strong and courageous and willing to stand up to the principles of we the people. So please make sure that you vote for me, Elizabeth Helgelien, on June 11th. Please vote for me in November. You can go to my website, elizabeth4nevada.com, to find out more about me, to donate, and to volunteer. Thank you. Ms.
Helgelien, thank you so much for coming on the program. Really appreciate you coming out. Jim, thank you. Folks, that's Elizabeth Helgelien, candidate for Nevada's Congressional District 3. Educate yourself on these candidates, folks, and go with the right one that's going to fit your needs. This is Steve Sampson, Jim Jones for Veterans in Politics. Until next time.